So someone just got done saying this right here. Hey, you're the one that gives me complexes because I use JavaScript and React from YouTube. Yep, I'm that guy. Also, I want you to read this one right here. When you start your Civil War reenactment, which is I'm going to use Ed for a week, man, just make sure you're using a quality keyboard. I had an intro into Pascal as my first CS course in fall 1984 in a lab full of CPU/M machines that had terminals so beat up that their keys would stick, specifically the enter key. We could only sign up for 1 hour at a time, and we had to keep all of our work on an 8-inch floppy and pre-work our code on paper and type it as fast as we could at the lab. I just wanted to kind of say something with those two things combined right there, right? I genuinely feel bad for anyone newer to the industry. And the reason why I feel bad for you is that, read that sentence. Think about how fundamental the work was, or we use the term fundamental, maybe closer to the metal might be a better term, that Eigentourist had to do, right? It was very to the metal, right? It was very close. Like, you knew what assist calls you were making. You knew what you were doing. You knew how close everything was. Whereas, imagine learning today. Today, you sign up and you go, I'm going to learn how to program. So you sit down and you Google how to start programming. You get some sort of YouTube video up and it says, okay, first what we want you to do is sign up for Vercel and let's start a Next.js project. And I want you to think about that for a second. How many layers of abstractions have been set up such that your first website you ever make is serverless? It's a JavaScript server. It's a JavaScript client. It is going to be using React. It's going to be using React server components. It's going to have this entire file-based routing system all put in. All of this all put into a single thing, and that's the point in which you learn, right? It's like you're trying to learn about Earth, and you do it by first observing Earth from Jupiter. Like, okay, yeah, there's this like bright thing out there. And it's like there's so much to that and so much abstraction that I genuinely feel bad for anyone starting, because what you have to learn in some sense is simple. It's much simpler than trying to write serverless yourself by far. But the amount of individual technologies and concepts you have to learn to put your cat pictures online is incredible compared to what I had to do. I had to do an Apache config file, an htaccess file. I didn't understand it, but I copied 3 lines of code and put it in there. And then I started a PHP server, and then that was it, right? I displayed my cat pictures. It was like 17 lines of code, and it went from Apache into PHP, and there was nothing else. And when my server went down, that was that. Like, I understood, like 80% of what was happening just by simply programming that out. But think about the layers of things you have to go through now to get to where you want to be. I realize I don't even have anything actually updating it here. I'm way off. And it just makes me feel like I genuinely feel bad for people starting off, because you don't have, like, you have to learn so many things just to do the world's simplest stuff. There's so many little individual steps that you have to take to do something. And I genuinely feel bad about that. I genuinely do. And I'm sure it's easy to give up. I am sure it's easy to feel overwhelmed. And I am positive 100% that there are so many people that try and give up because the abstraction is just so dang high. I don't know what the solution is. To be real, I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, anyone that's sufficiently motivated will simply learn how to do it. I believe that besides for like people that have a true learning disability. I can't read very well. I have decently word salad problems, but I can still learn. And with sufficient motivation, I've learned everything. Left college as one of the highest scoring computer scientists in my group. But for me, learning was very, very simple. I learned the art of programming just to a CLI. I learned data structures in which I printed only to the CLI. I learned about advanced data structures and algorithms only to a CLI. I learned the math behind all those things and had to prove the inductive case and why recursion worked. And that's it. And that was on paper. I spent multiple years just doing this really, really narrow thing. And then I started doing the bigger things. And it's just like when I came on to doing something else, the amount of difficulty to everything was just so much less, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it probably works because of this. And then I did, networks where I had to program these TCP, UDP sockets and make chat rooms, and it was all in C, and I had to do all this stuff, and it just was so much easier for me. And so, is learning via college, are these more longer, slower, foundational things better? I don't know if they're better. A lot of people dropped out, right? Can I say it's any better? I didn't say WebSocket. I said socket. There's a little different there. And so it's like, which one's better? I cannot say. And I would just like to, I'd just like to say that my complexity when I was learning was learning how to program harder problems, learning how to understand more complex topics, but were fundamentally foundational. When you learned how to do an if statement, learning how to do a for loop was that much easier. From a for loop, learning how to build a class or an object was easier. From a class or an object, learning how to do a linked list, it wasn't a huge jump. It was incredible. I remember that moment, seeing a class with a reference to itself and realizing how memory, like that was my first time that I was just like, that's how memory, like you can just keep pointing. You could just point it. You know what I mean? And it's just like those like steps, though fundamentally difficult, and a lot of people with 6 months, 12 months of programming experience today couldn't even do that. Like, right, they don't even have the underlying programming skills to do that. For me, I could do that, but I couldn't do what they did, right? I couldn't build a useful application. So it's like, it's so difficult. No, it's clearly not get off my lawn. I'm expressing a difficulty that I think it is very, very hard. If you take this as get off my lawn, no offense, but you are just looking for a reason to disagree. I'm sitting here saying, I think you guys have it so much harder than I did. I feel genuinely bad for you. So if that's how you look at get off my lawn, no offense, but you're kind of ridiculous. I'm literally sympathizing with you saying, I don't know what's better. I don't know how it's both harder and easier. You're absolutely right, because you get to move stuff around and build an application that's kind of useful. But when I learned, I didn't have to know React. I didn't have to know the squirreliness and upsettingness of JavaScript. I didn't have to know how to store stuff in a database. I didn't have to know about serverless and where things are hosted. I didn't have to learn about environment variables. I didn't have to learn about all that shit, right? I had to learn about how to program the thing, how to do an if statement. How is, like, for me, one of the first things you have to learn is how is an integer laid out in memory? Who here, as one of their first things, had to write binary by hand and do binary addition? Right? It's just a different way of approaching the same problem. It's just different, And so, did I have it easier or did I have it harder? I genuinely think I had it easier because the problem space. Because here's how maybe I can think of it better, is that in today's world, in like a bootcampy world, you have this, right? Which is you got like React, right? You got all this browser stuff that's kind of going on. You got servers that you have to understand. You got databases that you have to understand. You have to understand environment variables. You also just have to understand routing and how routing goes with your file basedness or however you're doing it. And then not only that, but you also have this like same slice, but then you have like Svelte and you have Svelte Kit, right? And you have all this competing advice. And then you also have like Solid, right? And then you also have like Solid Start. And you have the same wheel that you have to learn in so many different things. And then you also have, on the other side, you also have like Golang. And you have, their HTML templates. And you just have like all these competing things. And then you also have to learn about potentially Docker. And you also have to potentially learn about various hosting services. And all these things just to get started. And this is like a huge problem space. Whereas, sure, mine was like a very deep hole that I started on. But real talk, the hole that I was working on was like, just data structures and algorithms, right? And I did this for 2 years, right? People starting off today are doing this in 3 months. Like, just think of the differences here, right? It is vastly, vastly different between these two diagrams. I'm doing one single thing. So did I have it easier? I would argue I had it easier. Which language? I had to do it in C and Java. No C++, only C or Java. And so it's like, I don't know. I go back and forth, I go back and forth constantly on which one is easier, which one is harder. Is going through the full fundamentals better for a programmer than going through the bootcamp style? I want to say yes, but I also want to say no. You know what I mean? Like, I can't quite say which one's better at the end, because at the end, truly, it's your style of learning, the time you have available, and your motivation, right? Because some people just, they learn better by by having less direction, right? When they feel the pressure just on themselves to figure something out, that's like where they grow and do the best. I think, and those people that do that, they're just going to go off and they're just going to go and learn no matter what, right? Even if they have to go to college, they're going to learn. If they go to boot camp, they're going to take it further. And I don't know. One more thing. For those that are trying to figure out boot camp or university, I always draw this line, which is like, where's your self-motivation, right? If you're kind of a motivated person, but you also kind of like direction, go university route. If you are highly motivated individual, I think you should go more towards the boot camp route. Because what you can learn in a university, you can learn in 2 years of really dedicated behavior and just kind of jump some of the things you don't necessarily need to know, right? Right? Do you really need to spend 1.5 years learning data structures, or should you just learn about how trees, graph, and lists work and do that over the course of 2 weeks and say that's good enough, right? You know what I mean? And so it's like, which way should you go? It probably depends on the type of person you are, right? And also you have this whole time available thing. You have life circumstances that are going on. Like, life circumstances are really important, right? If you have a kid, is it easy to go to university? Not really. It's much, much easier to learn on your own, because then between the moments where you have the time, you can totally do the learning on your own, versus a university has hard set times and deadlines and these out-of-band labs and out-of-band meeting with other students and out-of-band doing these tests that are 3 hours long. It's just different. Then you have to learn about chemistry. Like, what the hell are you doing learning about chemistry? You don't care about chemistry. You know what I mean? I think ultimately the university route is probably better long-term for those that are decently motivated, but it probably makes no difference for those that are sufficiently motivated, right? Oh, what you did was simple, not necessarily easy. Sure, fair. That's fair. Anyways, just thoughts I've been having, and I've been really thinking about this, and I just, because I know there's a lot of new people here, and I feel genuinely bad for all the people starting off, because I don't know what the right thing is. Right now, what gets said to you is learn everything. Oh, and by the way, we're going to say that web dev is the only thing that exists. Not only does web dev being the only thing that exists, everybody out there has a super hyper strong opinion. Like, opinion so strong that if you don't learn React, you are effectively risking your career, right? Multiple people have said things near that. And to me, like, that's kind of crazy, right? It's kind of crazy. Like, that's the advice you get, right? I mean, Theo is coming around. I feel like Theo's starting to see that you can take maybe more than one route, and React, it doesn't have to be the starting point and the only point. I mean, I think it's easier to get a job by learning React. I think HTMX is great. I think Go is great. I like Rust. I don't like the community. I don't like, not. By the way, when I say community, I don't mean like Tokyo RS guy. He's great. I don't mean a lot of the people that are just lurking. I'm talking about you know which ones. They're annoying. But anyways, it's just Twitter Rust. There you go. That's probably better. Anyways, I just feel bad because you not only do you get told what to learn, you get told what to learn in an extreme, like, intense way. A way that I can't really relate to, because when I got started, there was no, like, you better learn Vim or you're going to be horrible at programming, right? No one said that to me. When I started learning, no one said, oh, you're using Java? Yeah, get ready to be legacy. No one said that to me. There was no social media. When I got started, Facebook didn't exist, right? I couldn't even sign up for a Facebook until like 2007 or some nonsense, right? Like, I didn't even have a choice, you know? So it's like, I learned for the sake of learning. I had MySpace, yeah. That's the thing, is I learned for the sake of learning and how to do it, you know? It was weird. It was different. Been in debt for 10 plus years, and this situation describing has made me completely numb. No matter how much I learn, I feel like I'm drowning in new tech. I can't keep up. Yeah, see, that's the thing is it feels really bad because even all of us who are doing it full time, none of us can keep up at this point. Nobody can keep up except for those that can perpetually be within this like kind of tech sphere, right? Like if I could full-time open source and only think about UIs, right? The only people that can keep up right now is like Ryan Carniato, the guy writing Solid.js, or Rich Harris, the guy writing Svelte, because only those people purely spend their time thinking about this like intense world of the web, right? And so then their thoughts are just like so much further ahead of yours, whereas yours is just like, I just got to write something to display my cat picture. Okay, that's all. I just need to display my cat picture. How do I do that? You know what I mean? It's their job, exactly. And so it's like your job is to right now in the tech world, your job is to perpetually be behind. It feels bad, but that's kind of what I see as. I don't think they're necessarily wrong. Like I think, like someone said Theo being a person that's saying React's the only thing good. I think Theo's trying to do the right thing. I think Theo's trying to help you get a job. I think Theo views the world through a certain lens, which is that he really, really likes TypeScript and it's made him successful. And so he wants you to have it. And it's obvious that it made him successful and it'll probably make you successful too. And real talk, learning TypeScript and React will probably get you a job if you want to do web stuff. He's probably right. It's probably the fastest track to get a job. And I cannot even argue it one bit. But it's not the only thing. You know what I mean? And so I grew up and I did, I did robots to start off with. I wrote robots for the Predator. I helped program an invisible fence, something that used ultra wideband to detect anomalies in volumetric areas, and then to rotate and swivel a camera towards that area. And what I learned is that government programming or government programmers are just inept, absolutely the dumbest. They design things just out of their butts. Someone put a giant motor underneath a camera, and guess what? When the camera would turn, guess what would happen guess what happened when the planetary pancake motor would turn, which, by the way, I programmed that algorithm to turn in the driver. Guess what would happen when the motor would turn on? I don't know, a big-ass electrical field. And guess what would happen to the camera's memory when it would turn on? It's just like, why are you putting a big magnet generator underneath some memory? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? Right? Just flopping bits all over the place. Dude, it took me 2 months to figure out what was happening. Because I didn't have electrical training. I didn't know what the hell was happening. I created the most elaborate debugging process of all time. To figure out what would happen. Oh my goodness. I was like throwing in like the oscilloscopes in there, trying to I was like, where the hell is this thing flipping at? Dude, I was getting so good. Yeah, we had RNG. I was playing Fortnite before Fortnite existed. Anyways, at the end of the day, I'm kind of having my own personal return to monkey experience right now. I'm building my own little thing right here that's using HTMX, playing Conway's Game of Life. It's absolutely fantastic. It's funny, this thing is flopping so fast that it looks like it's going slow because this thing's only producing at 30 frames a second, but this thing is going at an insane rate. Here, watch this. I'm going to slow it down, and it's going to speed it up on screen. Yeah, look at that. I slowed it down, and now it's sped it up on screen. That's kind of funny. But anyways, this is all client-side JavaScript, and then I have a whole bunch of HTMX at the same time. I returned to Monkey, and it really wasn't all that hard. It was kind of fun. It was kind of a fun experience going back to Monkey. And now I'm thinking maybe we have jumped the shark. Maybe, just maybe, we went a little too far, and Go and HTMX is beautiful. The name is the Primogen.